Hi, I'm George Finney, and I'm here to make you more well aware when it comes to cybersecurity. So this week we're talking about the first of the 9 cybersecurity habits, literacy. And I think of this chapter as really fearless learning, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But just to recap from last time, one of the things that we talked about, we focused in the introduction around this idea of habit change, and there's this habit loop. And so in the beginning, you have a prompt, you have the behavior, and maybe you have a good behavior you want to keep, or maybe you have a bad behavior you want to change. But at the end of the loop, you've got the reward. So you want to have something that makes it exciting for your brain, to give you that dopamine hit in order to repeat the habit and kind of strengthen that habit over time. You've probably thought in the last week about what maybe some prompts for you are. Maybe I'm sitting down to my computer to start looking at email. Maybe I'm creating a calendar entry, or I'm doing the scrolling through social media. Those are all prompts, and once you realize that you're in that position, then you can move on to the behavior. Your mind just naturally wants to go there for habits you've already developed. But we want to focus on how to use that feeling in order to get you to a new habit. So these are some sample prompts. We'll talk about more specific behaviors relative toward the habit of literacy at the end. And then the final piece of the process was rewards. So I suggest, don't give yourself a candy bar every time you do something small, because you'll gain a lot of weight. But maybe it's just take a deep breath and relax your shoulders, or send a text message to a loved one, a family member. Those kinds of rewards really do make a difference in terms of building that momentum in terms of habits. So we'll kind of pick back up on the habits again, but like with all the habits, I'm going to start out with a story. I have a story that I tell. If you've been a Girl Scout before, you might recognize this person. This is Sylvia Acevedo. She is the current CEO of the Girl Scouts. And so I tell Sylvia's story in the very first chapter of my book, because the Girl Scouts rolled out a series of cybersecurity merit badges a couple of years ago. And when they announced it, it was an amazing deal. Like it kind of came out of nowhere. Nobody expected it, knew it was coming, and all of a sudden, in I think May or June of 2018, it was just there. It just happened, and it kind of blew some people's minds. So I connected with her, and the story of how the merit badges came about is amazing. But Sylvia's story is really amazing as well. So I'm going to start there. So Sylvia is Hispanic. She's a first-generation immigrant from Mexico. Her parents really didn't speak English at home, and when she's growing up in the 50s and 60s, women weren't really expected to go to college. They were kind of expected to get married, and she had this experience of going to the Girl Scouts when she was, I think, in first or second grade. And that kind of created this confidence in her that allowed her in her career to not just go to college, to not just get a master's degree. She became a rocket scientist in an engineering field, right? So she was literally, a rocket scientist at JPL. She worked on the Voyager 2 mission, right? So all of these things really empowered her in her career for success. But it really started with the Girl Scouts to give her that confidence. To be able to say, no, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm passionate about. And it started with those first merit badges that she got. So when she was asked to become a part of the Girl Scouts in 2016, they had this ambitious 10-year program to find out what all of their new merit badges would be. And she looked at him like, wait, you're planning for 2025 to launch some new merit badges, and it's 2015, right? I didn't get that. No, okay, so you're wait, I've got a cell phone. This thing didn't exist 10 years ago. So there are going to be a lot of other things that don't exist today that will exist in 2025, and our merit badges are already going to be out of date. So what she did is she got the Girl Scouts to adopt agile business practices, which is a little mind blowing in itself. But she didn't stop there. So one part of agile is you go and talk to your customers about what they want. So that's what they did. They went out and asked the girls what merit badges they want. And by far, it wasn't even close. What they wanted to hear about was cybersecurity, right? They know that there are bad things out there on the internet, and there just aren't a lot of resources for young kids to learn and to help protect themselves. And so they tried to they successfully figured this out. They partnered with some very large security companies to launch that and to get the right expert advice to help them there. And they knew from teaching the girls other things that the first thing, again, I call this section fearless learning, that they knew that the girls couldn't learn. They couldn't be successful at learning all of those things unless they had a safe environment to learn it. This is key. I mean, this really is the cornerstone of everything that we're going to do with the 9 cybersecurity habits. Is we absolutely have to get fear out of the equation, right? So for our own, it's not just for Girl Scouts, for our own families or communities or companies. If we're having a culture of fear, we know scientifically that people aren't going to be able to learn as well as they would have otherwise, right? Fear shuts down the way your brain normally works. And fear is a great motivator to get people to not do things, but to get to do them proactively, you have to use something other than fear. You've got to use optimism. You've got to use hope. You've got to use connection and relationships with the people around you. Those are the things that motivate the Girl Scouts, and I think that's just as true for adults as it is with girls. So I think this idea of fearless learning is extremely powerful, and it's even more powerful because in security today, we use fear almost exclusively to sell our products, to push our projects, to get funding for our stuff. And we tell people to not do a lot of things. Don't do that, or else something terrible will happen to you. And that approach, I think, in a way, is setting ourselves up for failure. So this is the beginning, but keep that in mind that we're going to continue with the 9 habits in an optimistic frame of mind, right? We know that we can change. And that ability to change is really powerful for us. Okay, well, sure, we don't want to use fear, but what does cybersecurity literacy mean? And I don't think it means what we think it means. It doesn't mean that we're the expert in cybersecurity. It doesn't mean that we know everything already. And this is a challenge with the curse of knowledge. And so if you haven't heard the curse of knowledge, really once you learn something, once you know something, it's really difficult to go back to that state where you didn't know. It's really difficult to talk to people who are still in that non-expert state, to know the things that they need to understand to get knowledgeable in a certain subject. So literacy, the technical definition, is really just that you can recognize the words on a page. And I think that's a great place to start, because it's a lot less scary to just understand, okay, well, I just need to have enough of a foundation to put things together. So I need to know things when I need to know them. but I think it goes beyond that, right? There's a really specific neuroscience reason why the curse of knowledge is true, and I like to demonstrate this. So raise your hand if you could hear me tapping on my computer. You can hear. Okay, good. So I'm gonna live demonstrations, they always fail, but I'm gonna tap out the tune for a song. And I want you to jump in if you can recognize the song. So I'm not going to do it very long, so bear with me. But here we go. Okay, we have a hand up.
One more time. Do it one more time.
Oh, okay. Anything?
I didn't hear it the second time.
So I'll keep going. I don't want to keep rehashing it. If you can listen to it on recording. So what I just tapped out for you was the Star Spangled Banner.
Who said that?
Right.
Oh, can you see? Is that what you did?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's really hard. I mean, once you know the tune, listening to the tapping again, if you want to rewind and listen to it. Oh, well, that's very easy to pick out. Whereas before, oh my gosh, I'm just lost. I think we have to keep that in mind when we're thinking about cybersecurity literacy. So one of the reasons that I wrote the 9 habits and well aware the way that I did is because my goal is not to make everyone into a cybersecurity practitioner, right? You don't have to be an engineer or a security cloud architect to have good cybersecurity habits, right? So I want to give you enough of a baseline in cybersecurity so that you can recognize the words on the page and then apply them in your own way to your own life. And that I think is what I'm so excited for this masterclass because I want to hear back from you on how you do that and what things work for you and what things didn't, so that we can when I train other folks, I can just be that much better for them. And again, I love this quote by Einstein, and I think this quote is particularly powerful because it's Einstein. He doesn't think that he's wise because he created the theory of relativity. He thinks of wisdom in terms of I'm always curious and I'm always going after learning new things. And I think that in terms of cybersecurity is the way we ought to be thinking, because there's always going to be new attacks, new vulnerabilities, new schemes or scams or fraud kind of things going around. And so really we in cybersecurity know this, but we're always having to kind of keep up with the bad guys. And that's okay, right? We know we're going to do that. But for us, when it comes to cybersecurity literacy, whether you're a cybersecurity person or not, you do have to keep up with that. And it really is, I think it's critical to embrace lifelong learning just to have success in our culture today. But really, we're talking about the foundations here. And so again, I love this quote by Sylvia Acevedo. She says, "We don't lead through fear. The Girl Scouts are raising girls to be courageous, confident people, and they're giving those girls the skills they need to be fearless." And oh my gosh, if I wasn't sold on the Girl Scouts before, I'm definitely sending my daughter through the Girl Scouts program. But I was blown away to hear that every female astronaut that's been to space has been a Girl Scout, right? The numbers of senators and congresswomen that are former Girl Scouts is really unbelievable. And I think knowing that model, right? If you can create a safe environment for girls to grow, or for anyone, employees, family members to grow, look at what they can become, right? So, oh my gosh, where do you even begin with this? it begins with community, right? It's sitting down together. It's learning. It's understanding one another. So this gentleman. So we're kind of moving on from the fearless learning concept now to a concept I call tactical literacy. This gentleman, his name is Edmund Lasker, and he was a chess champion. Okay, so when you think of chess champions, you might think of like the American champion Bobby Fischer, who was amazing. I love reading about his life and his style. Bobby Fischer was the world chess champion, I think for 3 years. Lasker was chess champion of the world for 27 years. Right? It's not even close when it comes to second place. Lasker had this idea. He was a mathematician, a philosopher. I mean, he was really the definition of a Renaissance man. He had this idea that he really spent most of his life trying to forget all of the useless information he learned and collected over the years, right? And he really attributed his success in chess and other areas of life in really mostly to the idea that he had his success because really he had enough of a foundation, but he had a strategy for applying it, right? And so the reason that I call our strategy for cybersecurity literacy tactical literacy, it's not just that it sounds cool. It's that you need a strategy to learn the things that you need to know when you need to know them. And so as you're thinking about your careers, lots of folks know that they need to go get certifications, or that they need to get a degree, or maybe an advanced degree like an MBA to go to that next level in their careers. That's a very broad brushstroke. I would focus that strategy even more. So if you know that in the next 6 months or the next year you're going to be working on a certain kind of project, maybe you know that you're going to be making a major life decision, like purchasing a house. Okay, you can take those things and break it down even further, so that okay, I need to know about the security of electronic signatures for whatever documents I'm going to sign. I want to know that the security reputation of the companies or the projects I'm doing business with, so that when I get to that project in 6 months, I'm prepared. I've had enough of a runway to ask the right questions and apply that foundation of knowledge that I have in a very specific way. So that's really the foundation of what I'm calling tactical literacy. Really, it's a strategy for learning for your entire life, right? So you can plan for a month or 2 or 3 or 6 months in advance. Sometimes you can't plan at all, and that's totally understandable. But really, I think just getting a degree is not the way that we're going to have success anymore. And the other part of that is coaching. I really think that with like we do with leadership coaches, like we do with wellness coaches, or career coaches, that you really ought to have a cybersecurity coach or mentor, or someone that you can go to in your world to ask questions. So this is the quote from Lasker that I love. Of my 57 years, I've applied at least half, forgetting most of what I've learned, and stored very little in his memory. So, which is just unbelievable coming from such a great grandmaster chess champion of the world for most of his life. So again, tactical literacy means having a strategy for how and when you learn, right? You don't, I want us to be intentional about focusing on changing our habits, but also, we have to have a change in mindset of, preparing to have a strategy for learning for the rest of our lives. And so, okay, I've got a strategy. I know that I need to learn things. The next step, and this is a statue of the great Greek philosopher Socrates. Socrates was widely known, or in at the time and in the literature since, as he was believed to be the smartest man who ever lived. Well, that's interesting. So, what does that mean? The smart. So, he went to the prophet, the oracle at Delphi. We've all heard of the oracle, and the priestess there, said, you're the smartest person in the world. And Socrates, his reaction to that was really to say, okay, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm certain that I'm not the smartest person in the world. I don't know anything, actually. So he went around Athens, kind of harassing, accosting the smartest people of the day, the philosophers or whoever. And he would ask them question after question, and ultimately, he kind of showed that those people didn't know anything either. And this style of learning was I think so transformational. We actually now teach every lawyer in the country using what we call the Socratic method, which is really just professors asking students questions and learning to think on your feet. But kind of that idea that, well, actually we don't know anything, is a great way of finding your blind spots, right? If you don't assume that you know something already, you will go out and look for the answer. And actually that's reversing how our brains are actually wired. Our brains are wired to kind of be lazy. And I know that's weird to say, but if we think we have enough information to make a decision, we kind of believe that we know everything about it, and we feel confident about going through that. Whereas Socrates, totally the opposite. So I think Socrates gets a bad rap sometimes because being known as the smartest person in the world, I think people believe that he was really just toying with all these other philosophers and really just proving them wrong. Actually, I think Socrates had like the world's worst case of imposter syndrome. And I think he probably was very smart, but he also had trouble actually accepting that. And I think that's something that we can all identify with in a way. So probably the most important 2 words, if I could summarize all of Socrates' teachings down to 2 words, it's know thyself. So Socrates' advice applies to cybersecurity as well. So oh my gosh, if you look at the Center for Internet Security's top 20 security controls, the top 2 or 3 security controls for the last decade, it changes from year to year. Some go up, some go down as things evolve. But the top ones have always been keeping an inventory of the software you have, the devices you have, where your data is at. Those are the 3 most important things that the worldwide recognized leader in giving this kind of advice gives to people. And really, that advice it's really complex. It's got a lot of specific metrics and controls you can wrap around it. But I think all of that advice really boils down to what Socrates said, which is know thyself. Right? You need to understand who you are, what you're doing, what devices you have. Your family photos are here, or your tax documents are there. You keep your health records in this file or this folder. And well, the way I think about that is really like a pirate, right? You want a treasure map, where X marks the spot, and without that, you don't know where your data is, and because data is invisible on your computer, it's really hard for us to connect that back to something physical to really remember to think about it. Again, remember, our brains are lazy. So the way that I put that together is in kind of 3 steps, right? So first, create the treasure map. Know where it is and how you're protecting it. Maybe you've encrypted some files or password protected them or whatever. Maybe some files you shared with someone you're collaborating with. Who has access? Incredibly important. So once you have that, you need to know that in order to protect it. So that's really the first step. The second step is you can have the news come to you today. So whether it's setting up alerts, Google News alerts, just following companies on social media that you are interested in following. Again, you want to create a pipeline of information coming to you, so that as you're skimming through it, you don't necessarily have to read every bit of every news every day. But just like we've told people for years that if you want to get into business, you probably need to be reading the Wall Street Journal. I think the same is true in general for cybersecurity. And there are going to be sources that you trust more than others. But if you have a network of college and university attorneys that you're a member of, that's a great place to get very specific information relative to you and your profession. I'm sure the same is true for sales, mentoring organizations or HR organizations. So, find those channels and get them to come to you. And that's just going to prepare you that much more for having a chance at really being able to embrace that lifelong learning, right? If, having a prompt to say, I know so-and-so at this other company who does my same job ran into this issue. That's a great prompt for you to go out and figure out how you might address that in your environment. So the final step of that is to create a what I call a pre-mortem. So a post-mortem, if you're familiar with medical procedures or even technology, you try and figure out what went wrong after the fact to make sure that you don't do it again. I think you can do the same thing with a pre-mortem. At the beginning of a project, you can just sit down with your team and ask, hey, what could go wrong? And again, thinking that little bit ahead will help people brainstorm and help prevent issues from happening before they happen. But you want to make sure you write those down. Generally in security, we talk about this thing called a risk register, so that you can track all of your risks and plan for them. And you can do that whether you're a company or whether you're just an individual, right? I know I'm on social media, and there are risks involved with that. And how do I have controls in place that prevent them? Or over the next year or two, do I need to have some sort of solution to go out and protect me in a more comprehensive way when it comes to that? Like, I don't know, identity theft or antivirus or a password vault or one of those things. So I think a risk register really will be a great way to drive you into making better decisions long term. But really, that concept of a pre-mortem can be applied to anything. So I'm going to say this every time we have a masterclass, but security is in your DNA. You have that ability inside you, and really it's just about harnessing security through the 9 cybersecurity habits to focus your efforts, to bring that inner superpower out of you and help protect you and your communities every day. Again, we'll go back to the prompts. So when my phone rings, that can be a prompt, not necessarily to check the caller ID. It could be to vet the person that I'm talking to if I don't know them. But it could be something completely different. So when the phone rings and I'm talking to someone, maybe that's a prompt for me to go pull up that email with the daily headlines. Rewards, again, if I can give myself a Reese's peanut butter cup every time I do something good in cybersecurity, I would definitely do that. And I would then have to, run for 3 hours a day as well to keep up with that calorie intake. But again, I want to change my focus, change my perspective to always have that habit loop in mind when I'm thinking about doing certain things. And again, I will adjust that habit loop depending on how I'm doing. If I think that I'm not doing so well, I can definitely change that. So, recipes for literacy. Your homework, should you choose to accept it, is to start to actually write some stuff down. So please do in the chat session. now would be a great time, as we've been talking through the cybersecurity literacy habit, feel free to type something in there. If you're watching this on a recorded session, jot some notes down. Go ahead and email them to me, george@wellawaresecurity.com, and let me know what you're seeing, what you're thinking, and we'll talk about that next time. So again, I don't want to bias you, but here are some ideas for sample recipes. So maybe once a month or a couple of times a month you pay your bills online. So I think that's a great opportunity after you pay your bills, or as you're starting to pay your bills, to make sure you go and just check that credit score. So some credit card companies now have that kind of built in to when you log in, or maybe you've signed up for identity theft protection or one of those things from your bank, or one of the many companies that offer that. Just go in and check. If it's something that you only do once a month, I think that's probably the right frequency. But again, go in there and look for any oddities, right? Any accounts that you're not aware of, or in any new activity. What the FTC says is your damages, generally speaking, for identity theft are limited to $50, which is great. But if you should have known, if you had awareness or should have been checking your credit report, those are the kinds of things. If there's a new loan in your name that gets taken out, those are the things that are going to complicate your identity theft situation more, and canceling that loan or whatever is just going to take that much more effort on your part. So I definitely recommend keeping track of that. Another idea I had was, in the morning, I'm already going to drink my coffee every day. Drinking coffee is not a technology-related activity unless you've got one of those crazy coffee makers. But after I make my coffee, I'm going to read my daily news alerts on my phone. And this is, I think, a great habit to form, because I'm already addicted to caffeine, and if I'm connecting that habit loop with something that is already giving me that dopamine fix, then I'm just going to have that much more success. Again, if that first hit of coffee in the morning, your brain loves it. So if you're connecting, like, okay, I read my first news alert on the phone, you just need to read one, right? You're just establishing the habit. You don't have to read all of your email all at once before you drink your coffee. But having that connection, okay, I'm sitting down, I'm enjoying my nice cup of coffee. That's going to help reinforce that habit. And I also intentionally depicted these two habits this way. I really just want you to focus on one or two habits. So in your homework, email me your one or two ideas. But my two ideas are not necessarily stacked this way, but there's a concept called habit stacking, where you can, if the activities are closely related enough, you can have more success embedding those habits into kind of a chain of habits, if you will. So in these two, maybe I'm having my coffee, I'm reading my email alerts on my phone. After that, normally I put my coffee mug in the sink, rinse it out, and put it away. Okay, well, maybe now that's a great time to since I've already got my phone, I'm going to listen to a security podcast, or I'm going to take that next step. So the next cue, the next prompt, could be I'm putting my coffee mug in the sink. The next behavior would be start a security podcast and listen to George's latest episode on the CISO vendor security relationship podcast, or your favorite. I also like Net Diaries. Highly recommend that as a security podcast, just because it's so interesting. It's not technical at all. And again, then the reward could be take your first bite of croissants, or relax my shoulders before I sit down and start reading my email for the day. So again, think about those habits. Really, the habits are the core of the masterclass. So I definitely want to hear back from you guys. So
What was
where?
the name of the podcast again?
So there are two that my two favorites are really the CISO vendor relationship podcast by David Spark and Mike Johnson. The second one is called Net Diaries. The host is Jack Resider. And again, of the two, probably Net Diaries is the less technical, and it's really just crazy stories from the cybersecurity community or hackers or whoever that he's working with that day. Whereas CISOs talking about security, I think it's great if you're in sales, if or if you're in the security profession. But it's going to be a little less approachable. But it's also like a game show, so it's a lot of fun. So we are really just starting out. We're starting with the literacy habit. So next week, we'll talk about skepticism. And next week, there will be a slight change. I will send, obviously, the meeting invite out, but it will actually be at a 5 o'clock time frame, not the normal 12 o'clock. I had a conflict come up. Skepticism and vigilance, I think, are very closely related, but we're going to talk a lot about phishing and how to kind of recognize those things. We'll talk about zero trust, another great concept in cybersecurity that I think you can bring into your life in general, but that doesn't mean that you don't trust anyone. So sneak preview. So we'll continue going for the rest of the year. We'll have a couple of sessions go into next year, so we'll have some breaks with the holidays. But with that, please do send me your habits. Really look forward to hearing from you guys. And we'll stop the recording now and let folks ask any questions.